Here's my philosophy. I'm going to do what I'm doing that's working until it dries up completely. If I'm doing it in Philly, Philly's got to dry up. Then I'm going to Baltimore. That's got to dry up. Then almost all of residential has to dry up. Then I'll go commercial. Why? Because there's always a shiny ticket, a shiny coin. There's always something going on. And in real estate, there's 101 ways to make money. You just need the one way that works for you, that fits your lifestyle. And you need to stick with it and stay locked in, because getting distracted prevents you from diving deep enough to iterate and get better.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 360. My guest today has a prestigious Ivy League education and high net worth asset management background with Bridgewater Advisors. But in 2015, he left all that behind to launch his own real estate development company in his hometown of Philadelphia. Since then, he's renovated over 300 rental properties across the country using the BRRRR strategy. Brian Grimes is also the founder of 24/7 Cashflow University, where he teaches students to full gut renovate, acquire, and stabilize cash flowing rental property while revitalizing Class C neighborhoods. He's also come up with a strategy that has 3x'd his cash flow, and he's going to share it with us today. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
First, just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you kind of left the Ivy League and the corporate world behind to focus on your own real estate investing.
At heart, I'm a Philly basketball kid still to this day. I grew up in that Allen Iverson era in Philly. I grew to be about 6'4", 6'5" by the age of like 13, 14, was nationally ranked. Basketball took me to great schools all around the country, different parts of the world, landed me at Columbia University. I got a great education there, but even more than the education, I got tapped into some mentors who were just doing amazing things. They were, trading options at the New York Mercantile Exchange, business partners in real estate and commercial real estate with the likes of, Magic Johnson, TD Jakes, Alicia Keys, Jay-Z. And they really broadened my mind to making money outside of sports and outside of playing professionally and getting into that business field. But my parents, growing up, they're very entrepreneurial. So, my father branched out. He started off selling copy machines and fax machines at Xerox during like the, 80s, 90s kind of boom, and then branched off and started his own company. And I can remember sitting in the back seat and just, he was doing all of New Jersey. So he would just be ripping and running up the road, making sales, building clients. And I'm in the back seat listening to him on the phone, handling business and running a business and watching that. My mother's also very entrepreneurial as well, started several businesses, has been her own boss for a while. So I knew coming out of Columbia, I want to be my own boss. I want to control my own destiny to the point of, I'm an econ major and they were sending people to like investment banking, right? And you're working 18 hours a day. You drink a cup of coffee, go home, take a nap, shower, get right back to it. But you make like $180, $190. I chose the alternate path to become a financial planner, go back to Philly, 100% commission, no salary, cold calling attorneys, and just trying to survive right out of college. But that kind of made me fearless and kept me on that entrepreneur's path. And ultimately, as I was working at these different places, different startups, Bridgewater Advisors, I was always there from my perspective to learn how to run my own company. So any company I worked at, I was studying. I was not only working there, but I was studying the partners, the people that were higher up, the people who were running their own practice so that I knew what to do in my own practice. And I was just taking all of my profits, putting it into real estate. And eventually, I think around 2017 or so, I made the leap full time into real estate and I haven't gone back since.
You could have gone in many different directions with kind of that entrepreneurial background and the salesmanship that you had. Why real estate? Why did you go in the real estate route?
I had a friend, and they say you'll become, the five closest people around you. You'll become some variation of them, right? And I had a best friend still to this day. We went to high school together. We've known each other now longer than we haven't known each other in terms of us just being on the planet. And he graduated a little bit earlier than me, but he would read like the Robert Kiyosaki books, the Trump books, whatever real estate books he could get his hands on. And he had gotten maybe 2 Section 8 or 3 Section 8 properties by the time I was ready to graduate. So I still remember we went out to like a local bar at Columbia, and we're just kind of like hanging out. And he pulls out, a knot of 20s. And I'm like, what is that? And he's like, oh, this is the rent money. And I'm like, this broke college kid. Hey, I need some of that. That looks very interesting to me. So I started to get into the real estate. And when you have a best friend who's in it, that's kind of all you talk about at some point. We're not talking about sports. We're not talking about the weather. We're not talking about social media. It's just real estate all the time. And having those conversations, we actually built each other's education to different levels, to the point where I knew real estate was going to be that cash flow engine that was going to give me stability, that was going to have, money coming in where I didn't have to get up and work for money every day. I would just have money, coming in, rain, sleet, hail, or snow, even if I didn't get up to go work for it. And the thing that I love about the buy and hold strategy is you're getting paid over and over again for what you did, not for what you're doing. So that kind of matched my fiercely independent entrepreneur spirit, but also in seeing my father work at Xerox and work in true sales, where you only eat what you kill, you're only as good as your last sale, and they reset that quota every year, and there's no residual income. Residual income was everything. Even coming from my father, having lived, just commission sales with no residual, he's like, you got to go for the residual. Residual is everything. Trust me, I've lived the opposite end of that. So real estate is that ultimate ATM monthly, cash flow center that anybody can tap into and build what I call true wealth, which is residual income.
Take us through your process of creating residual income. I know you use the BRRRR method. Kind of describe using maybe a real life example of how you put that into practice in real life.
My target deals, and I'll do this in a lot of C-class neighborhoods for a variety of reasons. One being it's more profitable. Two, I believe in community impact. I believe that, if you have success at anything, first you'll make a lot of money. This is what happens to people. And the millionaires that I was managing money for at Bridgewater would agree with this. First, they make a lot of money, and then they start looking for how can they have community impact. If you're really smart, you kind of do both simultaneously, like always, because it's more rewarding. It keeps you tuned in and tapped in. So I do this in C-class neighborhoods. I'll target properties that have what I call a developer's spread. So people always ask me, like, what is it, this percentage? Is it the 1% rule? For me, it's a developer spread. And what that means is, can I acquire a property for $30,000 in a shell condition that would have an after repair value of $250,000 or $230,000? If the answer is yes, now I have a $200,000 spread that I can operate within as a developer. So I can go in and put in $110,000 into that deal, full gut renovation style, and then go to a credit union or some type of long-term lender and put a 30-year fixed mortgage on that property at like 75% of the ARV. So in some cases, I'm doing a cash out refinance, not just a pure like break even refinance on these deals. And I'm recycling capital over and over again. And then I'm just taking tenants and putting them in place, whether that be, Section 8, regular market rentals, there's co-living, which we'll talk about. But I'm using different strategies to create affordable housing, impact the community, and build cash flow long term, but also doing it while recycling capital. Because a big key is cash on cash return. If you can do a refinance on a deal, go in, buy it, build it, refinance, pull all your money out. Well, what's the return? It's infinite, right? If you don't have a dime in the deal, by the time you put the tenant in place, get some cash flow, and you have all your money back from that refi, well, the return is infinite at that point. So you're just recycling capital over and over. And that was always my strategy. First, it was a theory. And then there's going out and getting burned by contractors and learning from the school of hard knocks and making it a reality.
You've done over 300 deals. I love what you're saying about infinite return, because once you get your money back that you put in, Any money after that, you can't calculate the return because it's an infinite return. Have you created infinite return on all 300 of those properties? And if not, why?
Definitely not, right? On the overwhelming majority, yes. But there are always iterations in business. Like for people who join kind of like my mentorship program and things like that, I can show you the ropes. I can lay out the exact roadmap for you because I've gone through the battle. But when you go through the school of hard knocks, there's going to be bumps in the road. There are going to be contractors that burn you, material shortages and price fluctuations. You have to go through iterations to get to, certain scales where you can reach that economy of scale and save. So some of the early deals, also with your iterations, some of the early deals don't necessarily have the best cash flow setup, in my opinion, because you'll go through these iterations as a developer. First, you'll just buy and try to do cosmetic rehabs like they do on HGTV. Then you'll get more aggressive and you'll try to add value. And this is where you start getting smarter than the competition. You'll go in and say, well, this property has 1,400 square feet. Let me add another bedroom because I'm getting paid by the bedroom in most of these instances from a cash flow standpoint, not by adding more bathrooms or a bigger, nicer kitchen. If I can add another bedroom, I can charge a 4-bedroom rent instead of a 3-bedroom rent. And then you get even friskier and get into co-living. So some of the newer properties, I would say maybe the last 150 properties were better than the first 150 properties. And who knows, where the next 300 or 400 properties, if they will blow away the initial. And if you're doing this right, you should always be getting better, right? You're like a good musician. They're constantly learning. Like the best musicians in the world, they'll be 80 and they'll tell you, hey, I just learned something new yesterday because they're a student of the game constantly. That's what keeps them tapped in. So I'm always trying to improve and iterate and get better. But all of these deals, cash flow is just to various degrees. And then, when you're newer, sometimes you're blowing your budget or doing different things where you can't get all of your money out. But as you get better, you're not only getting all your money out, you're usually getting paid to build properties in the form of cash out refinances.
What were some of the mistakes you made early on in, say, those first 150 BRRRRs that you did?
The number one biggest mistake was not understanding construction and jumping in. It was a mistake, but it was also a necessary evil because the best way to learn in the school of hard knocks is to show why people choose it, is to just get smacked in the face, right? So you jump into a deal. Here's the mistake that we kind of all make early on and why we get burned by a contractor. One is a false sense of security. So everybody's got a buddy, an uncle, a cousin, or somebody who's a contractor, and you're going to lean on them to watch your deal. So you're going to go in and try to do a full gut renovation, and your uncle is going to keep an eye on it because he knows how he's been working on houses for 20 years. What you don't know is your uncle can kind of put down flooring. He's maybe a hack job of a painter, and he's never done a full gut job in his life. And he does not have the skill set to truly oversee a full gut renovation because he's never done it. But you having that false sense of security in him is going to prevent you from keeping your eye on the ball and truly managing the project the way it needs to be managed. A lot of people get burned that way by just having that false sense of security. And then the other is just putting too much trust in a GC early on and having that game run on you. The contractor game, everybody should hear this. The contractor game is this. A contractor is going to come along. You're new, so you don't know the cost of construction. So you're going to get bids on projects. And there's going to be one contractor who's like 50 grand under everybody else. And you're going to think, this guy's being honest with me. He's cheaper because everybody else is trying to rip me off. The truth is, he's cheaper because he's trying to run this contractor game on you. Once he gets you locked into this project at a $50,000 reduced cost versus everybody else, what happens? Well, psychologically, he's going to do a little bit of work and then try to get ahead of the draws and request more money and give a song and a dance. But you're prevented from going to another contractor and getting rid of him. Why? Because he's $50,000 cheaper. And you don't want to wake up in the reality where this job that you committed to at this price point costs $50,000 more. So you will continue to let him get ahead of the budget, listen to his story, hoping that he's not trying to take advantage of you, knowing kind of in the back of your head that he is, but him taking advantage of you, that risk and not knowing, it's a lot better than the certainty that you are going to pay $50,000 more for this project and blow your budget. And that's the contractor game that people get caught in. They wake up one day and they're like, well, the job's not getting done, but he's got a good price. I believe he could get it done. I'm hoping he can get it done. And it never gets done. Eventually the contractor wakes up when you've had enough and they run off with the money. And then you're still stuck with this job. You end up having to spend an extra $100,000 when you should have just did the 50. But that's a learning curve thing that you can get past with mentorship. You don't have to go through these experiences, but these are the hard knocks experiences that we go through.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB & Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. What are you doing right on the most recent 150? What are you doing right that nobody else is doing?
Almost nobody asked that question, which is funny. We always like to learn from the failures to a degree. Systems, the systems, as you fail, there aren't really failures. There's winning and then learning in this real estate game. And as mistakes happen or you go over budget, you start to learn what systems need to be put in place to prevent that from happening again. Hence the new iteration. So just the systems, keeping an eye on projects, working with contractors that I've done hundreds of deals with, maximizing the cash flow of every property. I want to get the most juice out of every squeeze. And once you start thinking like that and operating within areas that you're comfortable with, you can just make a lot of money. So it's really, for me, it's keeping the main thing the main thing. They say the reward for good work is more work. And as you start doing good work, all these other opportunities will come to you. People will come to you with different ideas. Oh, you should do commercial. You should do this. You should do that. Staying locked in on what's successful. Here's my philosophy. I'm going to do what I'm doing that's working until it dries up completely. If I'm doing it in Philly, Philly's got to dry up. Then I'm going to Baltimore. That's got to dry up. Then almost all of residential has to dry up. Then I'll go commercial. Why? Because there's always a shiny ticket, a shiny coin. There's always something going on. And in real estate, there's 101 ways to make money. You just need the one way that works for you, that fits your lifestyle. And you need to stick with it and stay locked in, because getting distracted prevents you from diving deep enough to iterate and get better. So while you're doing everything else that's shiny, I'm just getting better at this one thing and dominating it and dominating it and dominating it. So just staying locked in is a big mindset hack, keeping the main thing the main thing.
Somewhere along the way, you figured out a way to 3X at times your income. How did you come across that, and what are you doing?
How it developed was really through iterating off of Section 8. So starting off with Section 8, they pay you by the bedroom. So you start to do what we would call like a kitchen flip. If you go into a row home, there's usually on the first floor, you open the door, there's the living room, dining room, kitchen. So you get a little smarter with Section 8 and you start to flip the kitchen from the back of the property into the dining room. And you make like an eat-in, living room, kitchen type of area. Because families these days, they don't really sit at the dining room table and eat anyway. They sit in front of the TV or in front of the laptop. So you start to use the space differently. And in the back of the house, you put another bedroom because you get paid more for the voucher. So you start to get into this mindset of dislocating the property and building it in a way that has a higher use value and cash flow. And as you're doing that, I kind of stumbled upon the idea of, I saw new people who were making money doing room rentals. Can we do this better? Can we do a better product than this? And co-living was kind of born. So co-living was born through three levels. One was a conversation, and this is the Captain Planet story. One was a conversation with my architect. Hey, could you build like 3 master suites in a row home, like where you can only get to the bathroom through the bedroom? Can you build that up to code? Yeah, I can build it. Okay. That's step one. Now you go to your zoning attorney. Is there anything in the zoning code or the archive or the guidelines for the city that would prevent us from doing this? Will we need like a rooming house license if we wanted to rent it out to 3 people? No, you can do this as long as there's no more than 3 people not related by blood. XYZ, you can do this. Okay, cool. Then you go to your eviction attorney. Can I evict it? Like if they stop paying the rent, can I evict? Can you stand in front of a judge and pound the table and evict this product? Yeah, I can evict it. Okay, so I can build it up the code, I can tenant it up the code, and I can evict up the code. That, those 3 powers combined, or they're going to form Captain Planet, and we can now run this play. And those are the questions to ask in any city that you're in, any municipality, is can you build it? Can you tenant it up to code without like rooming house license? And then can you evict and stand in front of a judge and pound the table? And that was the birth of it, of actually going out and then building it and iterating it. And then attempting to tenant it and finding the rental demand, which was, we found it to be insatiable, actually.
I love that you kind of took the objections and knocked them down right in the beginning. Like anything that would come up as an impediment or an obstacle or objection, you just tackled each one. You got to tell us, what is Captain Planet? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Captain Planet is I think it's like an 80s cartoon where there's like these elements: earth, wind, fire, and heart. And there's like, there's like an Indian kid and a black kid and a white kid, and they like combine their rings and it forms Captain Planet. And he like tackles the big oil company that's spilling oil all in the sea. It's like this 80s cartoon. He's a hero. Captain Planet is a hero, but he can only be formed when the powers combine. And real estate to me is like that a lot, which is why for people who know Captain Planet, it's a funny story, because real estate in many ways, I believe ownership is a solo sport. Real estate ownership, you should just own by yourself, because you don't want to butt heads with your partner who's also an owner and has their own ideas. But actually building and being a developer is it's the ultimate team sport. And you really need a lot of people to combine and come together in order to get this stuff done. So that's the interesting part about real estate, is it's a solo sport and a team sport combined in different areas.
Going back to this co-housing, you realize, well, if I could fit strangers in a house together, that will make sense. What was some of the learning pains that you had making that work?
I think it was mostly shock versus pain, which is surprising to people. Like the first set of co-living properties that we released came on market in between like March and June of 2020. So the real pain was COVID, right? Like the shutdowns. But during these shutdowns, maybe 100 of these units filled up in the middle of like the pandemic, which was like, whoa, where's this demand? Is like, build it and they will come. This is crazy. And they're renting for $750, per unit on average.
When you say per unit, do you mean per bedroom?
Yeah, per co-living suite, we'll call it. And I'll talk about why, because it's interesting. People ask me these questions. Why? How do you know the price point? How can I figure this out? In order to figure out the price point of it, well, before we get there, a typical 3-bed, 1-bath row home of this 1,200 square feet will rent for $1,250 a month. A 3-bed, 3-bath co-living property, 1,200 square feet, will rent for $2,250 a month. So, you can add an extra $1,000 of cash flow per, property, per front door. It makes a big bang on your portfolio. I mean, you can imagine some people who are commercial, go do this on a 50-unit building. I mean, you're gonna beat out the competition. You can overbid $1 million for a land lot and still make money doing this strategy. But how you find the price points is you look in the market. What are studios renting for in Center City, wherever you're at? What are 1-bedrooms renting for? We'll just undercut it by $300. Co-living suite. This is now for the working class individual who is budget conscious. You can wrap utilities into the payment because each suite, 3 people can be splitting that, cost, mark up the rent a little bit. add utilities. So it's just this one blanket payment. So somebody who's driving Uber making $2,800 a month, and they know their rent is just going to be $750 a month, utilities included. They got security cameras, free internet, mini split system, so heat and AC, their own little studio space to themselves. They share the kitchen, but millennials don't cook anyway. They order Seamless or Grubhub. It's the perfect setup. And there, people don't know this, but there are millions and millions of Americans living on their parents' couch or in the basement, and they can't afford even the 1-bedroom rent. So you're building this product to address this market. And there is nobody addressing this market. There's no low income housing credit for some upper, lower, or lower middle class kid living on their parents' couch. They don't get a voucher. They don't get a Section 8 voucher either. So you're creating affordable housing without government intervention that addresses this population that truly needs affordable workforce housing. So the demand is unlimited because there's no competition. There's really nobody doing this stuff.
Is it typically millennials? And if it is someone living on their parents' couch, what gives you assurance that they're actually going to pay their rent?
So doing the underwriting and kind of getting into the weeds. So tenanting hundreds of these units, you can see things like, well, who pays and who doesn't? So you start to think like, who pays more, the single mother with one kid or the single father with one kid, which you'll see, or the couple who they have no kids and they both work? Single mother. What? The single mother, the single father with the kid, they pay more. Why? They want to keep the roof over their head, over the kid's head. The couple, they typically don't pay. From a statistic standpoint, from a percentage standpoint, you're talking about a 90% pay rate versus like a 65% pay rate. So there are weird wrinkles within this market from an underwriting standpoint that you start to learn. To address another part of the question is, no, it's not just millennials, right? So we have people who are, older and want to downsize and get out of where they're at. Maybe they're living with family. They're living with their daughter or their son because they can't really afford and they want their own space. So we've seen a older kind of retiree population tap into this product as well. It's also just a matter of putting like-minded people together. So you wouldn't put a 27-year-old girl in with a 65-year-old man, in the same co-living property. You want to try to do personality testing and match people like-minded to like-minded and similar age groups or like grad school age. You want to do some good custom matching at scale to make sure that you're running a good ship, and then also have house rules. That makes a big difference. And just, I found with a lot of tenanting, and because I've dealt with like the Section 8 marketplace as well, a lot of the things that go wrong are a matter of positioning. Before the tenant moved in, did you explain the house rules? Did you explain that, sometimes people pay late places and we get that, but we run a tight ship here. If the rent's not in on the 5th, we're giving you a 10-day pay or quit notice. If it's not in on the 15th, we're filing. And we run it tight. So if you don't pay, if you're that type of person, you don't want to come here. You'll just run the people away. And you start to learn how to underwrite better and position the product better from a rule standpoint, from a rent collection standpoint, to get the best people and that are, going to oblige and comply with the regulations that are going on. So it's a lot about underwriting, I would say, and off the chart underwriting, not just looking at a credit score, but really looking at the person and underwriting people.
Tell our listeners how they can find out more about you, get a hold of you. And I know you have a training program, so please feel free to let our listeners know about that as well.
I'll shamelessly plug my training program, but no, I'm easy to get a hold of. You can find me on YouTube, Brian Loves Cashflow. It's easy to remember because I love cash flow. So Brian Loves Cashflow on YouTube, on Instagram, Brian Grimes _247 CFU for the 24/7 Cashflow University. You can find me on LinkedIn, Brian Grimes. If you type in Brian Grimes Real Estate, you'll find me there. You can also find some of my trainings directly. They're backlinked on all of those platforms, but it's www.workwithgrimes.com/cashflow, workwithgrimes.com/cashflow. And yeah, we have, full mentorship training programs, VIP, where I work with you one-on-one to help you get your first or your next cash flowing rental property. We have people in the course from Hawaii, Texas, Salt Lake City, Canada. So even outside of the country, tapping into U.S. real estate. all the way up the Northeast coastline, Florida, the Carolinas, Virginia, DMV area, Boston, Jersey, Philly, like all over the country, tapping in special groups of people. Some are federal judges, some are attorneys, doctors, dentists, lawyers, all the way down to, people who are just driving Uber or truck driving and want to shift industry and kind of, change their situation. So helping people to break out of the 9-to-5 who are like-minded and want to, be on that intersection of doing good financially and doing good for the community.
Your favorite hack or app?
I love Slack. I love Slack as a communication channel. Whenever I'm building a business like a startup, and I consider entrepreneurs really a startup, Slack is that communication channel. Once you master it, you can really increase your efficiency tenfold. So Slack is a great app.
Brian, I really enjoyed this conversation. It started off as kind of a BRRRR conversation, turned into a co-housing, co-living conversation. You really seem like you're at the top of your game, and I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, experience, and wisdom with us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.